The third way that Pastor Jim reveals that he can invite the Holy Spirit to have a greater influence in our lives is to act on the promptings of the Holy Spirit. It is sometimes hard to know when it's the Holy Spirit prompting or when it's our own desires making noise. A quick check is to see that it reflects the truth of the Bible. The Holy Spirit's promptings will never go against its own words laid out in the Bible. You can check to make sure it expresses love for God and love for people, because there is nothing that the Holy Spirit would ask you to do that would hurt any person or go against God's own nature. Let me give you an example of what following the Holy Spirit's promptings looked like in my life. Going into my freshman year of undergrad degree, I had declared a major of construction management. I had a lot of experience working with my uncle in residential construction over the summers and had a passion for it. I knew it was my career path and I was excited for it. I was about a year into my degree, moving towards that end, but God had bigger plans and the Holy Spirit put a prompting in my heart to seek out a different path. Leading up to all of this, I had been volunteering at a church back home for about 2 years prior to this with student ministries getting experience. During this time, a few of the leaders had mentioned I really should consider working in ministry and pursuing vocationally to do, which I laughed and said, I will never work inside of a church. Little did I know what God had planned. This continued for a while, but it felt different. I felt the Holy Spirit leading me towards a different path. So about a year into my program, I changed my major to the closest thing youth ministry that I could find at a secular college and started looking into continuing education when I finished. I started researching, visiting, and applying to different seminaries all over the country. After visiting a few seminaries, it was time to weigh my options. Before I started, I had a very specific prayer and conversations with God. Though I knew I was headed to seminary, I didn't know where I should go. So I started praying very specifically to make the clear choice. I wanted to make sure that while I kept an open mind on these seminary visits, that God would provide these 4 things for me to make it clear. A clear excitement for a school, a church to be a part of while I attended seminary, a job hopefully in that church, and a place to stay. I wanted to make sure that God made it extra clear because I'm a little slow. Well, the choice was down to 2 seminaries. At one seminary, I was one of 5 people that were going to be selected for a full scholarship. I liked the school. I thought having it all paid for was amazing, but it wasn't what I prayed for. It made sense on paper, but God had different plans. And again, I felt a prompting from the Holy Spirit elsewhere. I turned down the full ride and accepted a spot at a seminary in California instead, because while visiting, I was not only accepted in the graduate school, I was offered a job at a local church, and they offered me a free place to stay while I worked at the church. I was blown away. Had I chosen what had made sense on paper financially, I think I would have missed what God had in store for me. God had answered these prayers so specifically, and the Holy Spirit was prompting me to follow in obedience. I cannot tell you how happy that I am that I followed these promptings. Pastor Jim mentioned that more that you follow through on these promptings from the Holy Spirit, the more you receive them. I would say that in my experience, it is true. Don't ignore the Holy Spirit when He's making Himself known.